Hello, hello. We're
Hello.
just about to start Mondays with Tara André on ghosting.
Ooh.
Oh, we are here. All right, let me
All right.
take this off. Good morning, everyone.
Hey, good morning. It seems like 11 o'clock comes too early sometimes, right? We're always, feels like we're always in the scramble to get there.
I know. It's like we have lots of time, and then it's like we're busy getting ready, and then here it is.
Hurry up and wait, and then here we go.
Yeah. I feel like I'm super cut off here.
Yeah, no, I'm loving it.
We're trying something new, putting Andre a little closer to the microphone because he's a little quieter than me. But as such, I look really small.
Okay.
All right. So welcome to Mondays with Tara and Andre.
Yes, good morning.
Please say hello in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from. If you're joining us for the first time, we come here live every Monday at 11 a.m.
Yep.
And we talk about how you can have open, secure, loving, open or polyamorous relationships.
With less heartache and resistance.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and more benefit.
So just to do some introductions, I'm Tara Lynn Franco, and I am relationship and awesomeness coach.
And I'm Andre Turcotte, registered psychotherapist.
Sex positive.
Sex positive.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
So today's topic, as you may have seen, is 10 secrets to avoid ghosting or being ghosted.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be part one, because as we started preparing for this, we realized it was going to be a much longer show and thought it would be better to split it in two. So you'll have to join us next week as well.
Right.
So before we jump in, though, a little poll.
Yeah, go ahead.
From the group. I know there was some comments in the group. Have you been ghosted, or have you ghosted someone?
Or both.
Or both.
Right. So one, if you've been ghosted. Two, have you been ghosted? Oh no. So one is, are you the ghoster? Two, have you been ghosted? And three, a little bit of both. But it's amazing that we should even know what ghosting is. It's a phenomena that I don't think the previous generation really knew, right?
I know.
It's something that seems to have been more prevalent in COVID, but also with online dating.
Yeah.
It's
online
easy
dating
enough
and
to make
technology.
connections and get rid of them.
Yeah.
So in case we don't know, what does it mean to ghost somebody? What do we mean when we say we're ghosting somebody?
Okay. Well, I'd love to hear in the chat what people, if you've been ghosted or not ghosted, and that sort of thing. But yeah, let's jump into the definitions. But I think I have to say that so many people talk about ghosting coming in the group. So it's such a common thing, and there's so many. We did some research for the show. There was lots of articles and that sort of thing on this topic. So we're gonna talk a bit about what ghosting is, but also some other common terms that have come up as well that are similar. So let's jump in.
So what's your experience? Let's start with the definition. I want to know if you've ever been ghosted or you're a ghoster. And
I have been breadcrumbed. Yes, we are talking about breadcrumbing.
Oh, great. We'll find out what that means as well. So how about ghosting? Let's give a nice little concise definition of what we mean when we say ghosting.
Yeah, so ghosting basically means where communication is abruptly stopped. So without explanation. The without explanation is probably the key term there. Right. So then someone just disappears like a ghost.
Yeah. So it could be texting, or it could be after a date or after a series of dates or something. But basically, everything seems like it's going fine. There's some rapport, and then all of a sudden, the other person just drops off. They're a ghost.
They drop off. Because I think in the research we did, there was a different definition, whether or not, like, some people were like, it only happens if you're like just texting, but I think ghosting also happens in relationships and that sort of thing. So
it could happen that it goes beyond texting. You might experience it in texting, where you're going back and forth, and there's a kind of a regular rhythm to it, and you know that within a expected amount of time you'll hear back from them. That's how it's been set in the pattern, but then suddenly it just stops abruptly without explanation. And the same thing could happen after a date. You might say, oh, that was wonderful, and let's get together, this, that, and the other thing, and then you don't hear back from the other person.
Have you ever done that?
I've been on both sides. I'll give myself a 3 on that one.
Yeah, I've definitely been on both sides too. And then, I think it's an important question too, is like, when is it ghosting? Because we actually talked to a friend on the weekend about, like, when is it ghosting? Like, if you're just chatting with someone online and you've had a few conversations and then you just stop, is that considered ghosting?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is it if you've already been on a date and there's an expectation that it's ghosting? Like, I'd love to hear from people what they think. Oh, someone said we're nicely dressed.
Nice.
Thank you.
Twins.
Twins.
But somebody else says we're siblings, which is.
Oh yeah, that was on our short.
Yeah,
that was pretty
that's
funny.
So perverted and possible. Yeah. we can do that. But anyway, so as far as the ghosting, yeah, when is it in fact ghosting? And I wonder if it is for the person who is experiencing it to consider it to be ghosting. But it's interesting. I noticed myself that if I'm on a certain dating site, there seems to be this kind of back and forth, and it's a little bit more intense than other dating sites, other apps. Feels like, well, we check in on occasion, and that seems to be the etiquette. It seems to be the idea that that's how we operate. And then going into real life meetings seems to be a category into itself. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like I was trying to answer that question for myself. I like this comment. I put it up. So I was a bit distracted. So I'm sorry. I wasn't as actively listening as I could have.
Yes. Active listening.
Trying not to take it personally when I've been ghosted, because we never know what people are currently, what's happening with people. And I totally agree with that. And I think we're going to talk a bit more about that next week.
Yeah, well, that reminds me also about the idea of ghosting, and how this one app that I'm thinking about in particular, how people don't seem to necessarily come back to it so often, or even with friends that we might have had that we're chatting to them and all of a sudden they seem to be distant. And in the past, I might want to personalize it. I might think, well, did I do something? And you in your wisdom said, well, what else might be true? Maybe they are just busy or doing something else or have something else going on. So that knowledge might also help me to resist the temptation to personalize or over-personalize it. But at the same time, and we'll get into this probably next week, about what's my part in it as well. So, we should never want to ghost, and they are responsible for their actions, but am I also playing a role in this? So if I have 10 dates and I get ghosted in 9 or 10 out of those 10 dates, well, is there something that I might want to be looking at as well? And we'll look at that a bit later.
Someone's asking, I can't see who it is because it says Facebook user, how not to take it personally. I think it's really easy to take it personally, but like if I use my own, we'll talk again more about this next week, but if I think about my own situation, I wonder if people thought that I ghosted, because I am terrible on the apps. I'll admit it. I'm terrible. And so I go in and I communicate with people and I get excited. I think, oh yeah, we're going to meet. And then we don't meet. You know what I mean? And they might think, oh, there's Tara again, ghosting. So if it happens to me, I kind of go, well, maybe they're not on the apps very often. Or, I mean, this is a situation where I think you can decide the meaning for you, like that they have other things going on, or, if they are doing this, that they're not the right thing for me. So person for me. So maybe it's better off that I know that now than wasting my time further. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things you can think about.
As you had said that, I was thinking also about, and I was trying to still remain active in listening, but I also had the idea, so is there kind of an intentional ghosting or a situational ghosting? So like you say, maybe I get busy and I don't respond as quickly. Do they feel as though I'm ghosting when in fact it's not my intention at all? It's simply that, life comes up and I'm busy.
Yes.
So, yeah. And then I think part of it also for me, the reason why I bring that up is if I feel as though I am the one doing the ghosting, why am I doing it? So maybe I do it to avoid feelings of discomfort, but it reminds me a lot about how it seems parallel to procrastinating, right? So I put it off because it's sticky, I don't want to do it, whatever it is. And yet, even though I'm putting it off and free for it on the moment, on the concrete level, I'm holding it somewhere in my psychic economy. Right. And when I ghost, maybe I don't have to have the difficult conversation, but in the back of my mind, I'm still holding it. I feel bad for them. I feel that I wouldn't want it done to me, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a bit about that. But it's Drang that was commenting, saying you feel it in a heart, thus it feels personal. So I can see that. It does hurt the heart, especially it's a disappointment. It's that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're invested in the person, right? We're liking them. There's the optimism of what might be. Right? Yeah.
So I guess, I think we'll talk a bit more about it. Okay. I like that. For me, if people are not reactive to my efforts, it just means they're not for me. I respect that. I don't take it personally. So that's definitely a way of doing it. I love that.
And that's a great position to have, because then you're realizing your investments and where you're going to put them. And if it's not viable, then reclaim your investments and go elsewhere with it. It's better serving for you as well.
Yes, exactly. So let's jump into a couple of the definitions, things that are similar to ghosting that are common used terms. And somebody commented in the group, breadcrumbing.
Sounds delicious.
Breadcrumbing. Well, think about breadcrumbing in Hansel. Was it Hansel and Gretel?
Right.
No, Little Red Riding Hood.
Right. So they were left. These little breadcrumbs were left as a way
to find their way back.
But it keeps the person interested, right? So you make these little offerings, and they pick up one morsel, and they go to the next, and we're stringing them along essentially.
Yeah. So you're dropping small morsels of interest, you know, an occasional message, a call, a plan to date, social media interaction, like people liking your posts or commenting them on, you know, it's for the receiver. I think it feels like you're just about ready to give up, and then they send you a message and say, "Hey, Tara, like I was thinking about you today," or something like that.
You know, it's interesting comparing it to ghosting. For me, ghosting might be, well, the person's avoidance of having a difficult conversation, to say, you know, I like that you like me, but I'm not really feeling it. Whereas breadcrumbing feels much more sinister. It's as though I have a motive, and it's because it fluffs my ego to keep you interested, or I'll keep you for a rainy day, or whatever the motive might be. Yeah, it feels less honorable. Definitely. Not that ghosting is good or acceptable, but this one feels even darker to me.
Yeah, and breadcrumbing can happen in like more casual dating, but it also can happen in relationships. If you actually have an ongoing relationship with someone, and you know, maybe you're long distance or whatever it is, like people can breadcrumb to keep someone along. But I have to say a caveat to that is I have someone that I've dated, and because for specific reasons, we are hardly ever in the same place at the same time. And so they will send me occasional messages. I'll send them occasional messages to say, "Hey, I'm thinking about you and looking forward to getting together with you." And so I know the situation is such that it's harder to meet. And so I don't take it personally. So that doesn't feel like breadcrumbing to me. That just feels like someone is wanting to maintain contact until we can meet. So in a way, I suppose it's breadcrumbing, but it's breadcrumbing for a positive good.
So I wonder if the distinction then lies in the idea of our being transparent about it, right? So there's consent. I'm not in the same town as you, but I'd like to get together. So let's just, you know, play tag once in a while and make sure that we're still on each other's radar to some level. Whereas in breadcrumbing, I've made the decision that I'm going to string you along. You think that everything is still good, but I haven't told you I'm not really that into it, that my motives are different.
Yeah.
So I think there's a big distinction there.
Yeah. And I wonder too, I was just thinking as you were talking, maybe it's a choice too. I could choose to believe that this person is only contacting me because eventually be in the same place and they want to hook up. But I don't feel that way. Or maybe I'm choosing to not to feel that way. So no, I think it's a bit of a choice. I think with all things in dating and relationships, there are choices we make about what we think about them. You know, it's a lot of the work that we do with clients is around that. It's like, what are you going to choose to believe? What is the narrative you wish to have about something?
Right. And are you bringing the past narrative forward, right? So if you've been burnt or had some bad experiences in the past, are you going to automatically assume that this is the thing that's happening? And will you then start to create that thing and happening?
Yeah. Well, that's possible too. And like somebody said too, it can be situational. Like I had a client, they were very upset because they thought they had made a really good connection with somebody and had a few dates, and like there was plans to, you know, get together again. And then they completely lost touch. Now that person could have done a better job at doing the things that we're going to talk about, but they felt seriously like they were ghosted and what did I do wrong? And then only to find out later that that person reconnected and apologized. There was a whole shit ton of things that dumped on them at once, and they just didn't have the emotional, mental capacity, they said, to deal with it. So, you know what I mean?
But did they just cut off?
They just stopped.
Connection abruptly?
Yeah. So I think that's where you can do something different and say some of the things, some of the suggestions we have.
Right.
So,
and I wonder what the people listening might offer as a possible remedy to that. What might you say if things, you know, if you suddenly find yourself busy or distracted or a situation changes, how are you going to announce that rather than just going radio silent and leaving the other person having to fill in the blanks?
Yeah, that's great. Well, while we get to those things, you can drop those in the comments and we can share them. Okay, so similar, maybe related to breadcrumbing, is shelving or benching.
Yeah. So what does that mean, shelving? Because I played hockey and, you know, I've been benched on occasion. It sucks, but what does it mean as far as dating?
Yeah, it's sort of like when you're texting or chatting with someone in a way that makes it suggest that something further is going to happen. So it is similar to breadcrumbing, but I think the distinction for some people is that I have other things that are going on in my life that are preventing me from seeing you. So like work or personal things.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, once those resolve, I will reconnect and do things again.
So you're using some other outside reason to justify the position, but then you're also wanting to keep them engaged because it might somehow be potentially a romantic relationship, or in some way serves you to keep them connected.
Yeah, and it can be true or not true. But I mean, I think I've probably been guilty of this. It's like I meet someone online. I'm like, yeah, I think I might be interested, but I got a lot of other things, and they're not on the top of my priority list. Really, what I should say is like, I'm not interested in pursuing something at this time, and if that does change, I will, I will reach out. So, because usually it's a plea to stay in touch, like that's part of it as well, the shelving and benching, not just saying I've got other things going on, but saying, well, I really like to keep in touch. I hope you'll stay in touch, and so we can get together when things settle down.
But that's that's assuming that the motive is suspect. But what if you do have a lot of stuff going on and you do potentially see potential in the relationship? So right now I'm busy, or I'm polysaturated, but yeah, I would like to, hang out in the future. Maybe we could.
Yeah. Well, that's just the situation I described, right? There is things that are going on, and I think you do the first thing that's on our list, which we will get to in just a moment. Foreshadowing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go to it then, should we?
No, we got one more definition.
Oh, to that one. Okay.
One more definition. So is quietly quitting, or sometimes referred to as quietly dumping. So this is an interesting one, and some people may not have heard this as it relates to relationships.
We see it in business sometimes.
Yeah, right? In business. Yeah, so in business or in a job, you might be quietly quitting by just doing the very bare minimum of things to keep things alive, like to keep your job.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're like checking the clock, and you're getting there at 9 o'clock, and you're leaving at 5. Not that that's wrong, because I think you should only work your work hours, but maybe you're just putting in the minimal effort. You're really not caring about the outcomes. You're sort of putting in the motions.
So your level of emotional investment has shifted, and you are less interested. Now you're just going to do the bare bones minimum.
Yeah. And so, it is related, but it's often when people in a relationship, I think when people want to, basically they want the other person to fire them. They want them to dump them. They don't want to be the dumper.
Yeah. It sounds very passive aggressive.
Yes.
Or rather aggressively passive.
Well, it can be for sure. And in jobs, people do this because they don't want to work, and they want to be, fired and compensated, or they just don't, they're just checked out.
So there's a very obvious reason why we might do it in the workplace, but what about in relationships? What would prompt us to want to adopt that position?
Yeah, you don't want to deal, possibly, that is this a test?
No, just
well, what do people think? I think people, I think you might do this if you feel guilty about being the one to call things off. You don't want to hold those feelings,
right? Because
you don't want to hurt someone or that sort of thing. And I think what happens is, you're actually doing more harm. And that's the same thing with ghosting. Right. I think the intent when people ghost is not to hurt someone. Generally, I would say that it's just you don't know how to deal with the situation. So instead, you might just not say anything.
Right. But meanwhile, you're prolonging the suffering in a sense, right? So yours and theirs. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's suffering. So.
But, it's all in the service of what we imagine would be a way of avoiding those feelings of discomfort, having to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
But it's not a viable solution.
Yeah. But sometimes I think for the ghoster, it feels like it's the only way out. And it's, if you're not interested in something, because it can be a difficult conversation. And I think we're here to say that it's important to be brave and communicate honestly, like with all the things, you know what I mean? It's just, it's better around for everybody. And I think, like you said, you won't also hold on to that feeling of doing someone wrong as well. Okay.
So be brave.
All right. So we're going to start the 10 secrets to avoid ghosting and being ghosted with avoiding ghosting.
Right.
So you're in a relationship or you're talking to someone and you want to end it in some ways.
Okay. So number one, instead of being silent or silence, be honest, right? So let it be known what you're thinking and feeling about it. And, going back to the idea of personalization, when we look at chemistry and we do make that connection, we don't often question, well, why are we connected? So if we meet somebody and there's not that spark and connection, why should we then assume that it's got to be personal? What if it is, to a big part, chemistry and we're just not feeling it? Can we see how that would be an area where we don't have to personalize it? So when we find out from the other person, for whatever reason, that they're not wanting to move forward with it, can we, again, resist personalizing?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and I love what this person said about ghosting. Like, instead of ghosting, just send a quick message. Hey, I'm going through a lot in my life. I care about you, and I'll reach out once things settle down. And, it's not about consuming, and it's not time consuming, and it's honest. Yeah. Because I think without the truth, I think people are left to fill in the blanks. And as humans, I think we fill in the blanks in the thing that hurts us the most. Like, we did something wrong. They don't like me. I'm not good enough. Whatever it is, that will not serve us. So, if you do care about someone, telling them the truth is a more a kind thing to do.
Yeah, no doubt.
Being honest.
Otherwise, it's kind of like, telling somebody to wait at the bus stop, and then the bus is never going to show up, but they're just left waiting.
Yeah.
And that's horrible, right?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, better to know that the bus isn't coming, and then they can make other arrangements to find another bus.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Good analogy.
Yeah.
Good analogy. So there was a good suggestion there. Some other suggestions. You've gone on a date with someone, instead of when that thing like, oh, should we see each other again? And you're like, oh, sure. Meanwhile, you're really, if you've decided already that they're not for you, you could say something like, I really enjoyed our conversation, but I'd like to, I see this as being more of a friendship for me.
Yeah. How would you feel when somebody tells you that?
I think obviously if you had interest in them, your initial reaction might be like, like disappointment. Yeah. But I think I would also rather know.
Yeah, rather than waiting for it, or taking an approach where you're pursuing them only then to find out later on. So it saves you all of that investment, all that heartache, all that embarrassment potentially, and you would be able to know sooner rather than later.
Yeah, because then you're like sitting by your phone waiting for the text, or whatever it is, and being more hopeful. Whereas it gets it over, it gets it over much quicker.
It sure does.
So you can, and you have to pick the thing that actually is true. Like, we're giving you some suggestions, but it's not. You don't say these things if they're lies. Like, I've been recruited to the Secret Service, and I'm going to be away for 10 months. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. I mean, that could be funny, but no.
Well, it's interesting though that should be a possibility that might come to our mind, because for me, what I hear in there is making it so ridiculous, because humor is a great device to cut some of the tension, right? So if I'm feeling really awkward about it, and being honest is difficult for me to, because the consideration of hurting the other person's feelings, if I invent some crazy way, something that's like so fantastic, something that's adding some humor, is that in the attempt of kind of alleviating the tension that might be there.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that would help. Do you have some other suggestions?
Well, I was also, talking about the honest part, but also in a way that might not make it so personal, is even just saying, I had a wonderful time with you, and I enjoyed our time together, but I didn't feel the spark, which is a way of saying, well, there was not that chemical or chemistry between us that I would might otherwise experience or want to experience, right? So that might be one. It might be hard to receive. You might also say, well, what's wrong with my chemistry? How come I didn't? But if you really looked at it on a kind of more distant way, you might see, well, then, yeah, actually, it's almost like finding the right fit to that puzzle. And sometimes it's less viable, but we shouldn't personalize it.
Exactly. One of the suggestions also was about values, like saying something about, I don't think our values line up. I mean, I think that's a possibility, but I think that's, how would you, if you were just texting with them, I mean, you might know from pictures or things that they've said. Yeah, I think you want to do it in the most gentlest, kindest way. That's honest. And, yeah, I'm not sure about the values one. I can't remember what that one was. I didn't write it down. My reaction to it was like, yeah, I don't really like that.
Interesting. I wonder how you would feel if someone were to say to you after a date, like, I don't think we have the same value system. Does that feel judgy in any way? Would you think like, oh, my values are not up to your standards? Like, yeah, I wonder how you would receive that information.
Yeah, I think that's why I might have had that reaction. But it's probably true. Some people might have different values, or they may want a different relationship style. But you know what I mean?
That one sounds like it's not me, it's you. Our values are different.
Someone said values seems like a judgment call. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Oh, someone says it's less about chemistry, more about compatibility. Yeah. I don't feel like we're compatible romantically. Like, that's a good way of doing it. Yeah.
It's interesting because what about when you might offer that? I don't think we are having the same values or romantically compatible. And then the other person says, well, I can change my values. I can change my relating style. I can do whatever it's going to take. You know, they're not wanting to receive that information. It's difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, but like I said, someone pineapple on pizza.
That is like the most typical deal breaker for sure. I think that's mandatory in the conversation. You got to know where they're sitting.
I like pineapple. Okay, so we talked about.
You do?
I like pineapple on pizza.
Well,
Ham and pineapple, it's classic.
We need to talk about this.
Oh no. Are we done?
Might be the deal breaker.
Are we done or am I done with Kimmy? I think it was Kimmy that made the comment.
Maybe I could learn to like pineapple.
You love pineapple. I'm surprised you don't like it on pizza. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Try everything twice. I'll try and see if I can re-meet pineapple anew.
Okay. All right. So number 2, so we talked about being honest. So the other part about this is putting yourself in their shoes.
The empathy of it.
So sometimes it helps if it's difficult to be honest, then take the position is how would you feel if you were in their shoes and the situation was reversed?
I don't know. Like, would I want to have my time wasted, or would I feel as I'm wasting their time? Yeah, it's good to have that position of empathy to realize if you've ever had somebody ghost you, you know what it's like, and you know that it doesn't feel good. So even though they are feelings of discomfort, even though it might be awkward, it's something that you should consider, right? So you know how it feels. Don't do it. It doesn't feel good.
Yes, I love this. The acceptance. The acceptance of no is tough, but it needs to be respected as much as enthusiastic. Yes, exactly. Yeah, but I think I think I'd rather no. So if I was going to put myself in the other person's shoes, I might, say, okay, yes, I'm going to tell them that because it would hurt much more to be disrespected. And also, that whole fill in the blanks thing. Like, I don't like feeling that way or not knowing. It's just like, yeah, when someone breaks up with you by text and then they, cut off all call communication, you kind of want to know, a little bit, something like, yeah.
It's like ripping off the Band-Aid.
Okay, so that was number 2. Did you have something else to say about putting yourself in your shoes? No? Yeah, maybe. Okay, number 3. So here's another situation that might arise. So instead of hiding from your mistakes, start apologizing. So this is a situation, so you might want to ghost. If, say, something happens, you did something wrong, and now you're afraid to fess up and deal with someone's anger or hurt. Right. So you might instead just stop communicating. And that can happen with friendships and family and stuff too.
All kinds of situations.
So you just stop talking. And because you just like, I don't want to deal with the fact that I did something wrong, or you're afraid of their reaction to you.
Yeah, the ostrich approach, right? So if I don't talk about it, if I just move my attention from it, somehow it'll make it better or neutralize it, but I won't have to deal with those difficult, shitty feelings, right? Yeah. But what happens when we come to it and we just own up and say, hey, you know what? I fucked up. I made a mistake. I don't like the way I acted or whatever happened. And where can we go from here? Having the dialogue about it, communication.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this hurt you. My actions hurt you. I think I'd want to know that rather than someone just, ghosting me.
Right, because as you say, then we're just having to fill in the blanks ourselves, but also the time until the next communication, it stays present in our mind, right? Whereas even though it's not the most fantastic message to receive, having somebody say, I'm not wanting to go forward, at least we know we can have that painful moment, but then we can have closure to it as well.
Exactly. Again, ripping off the Band-Aid and tapping into your apology language and doing the right thing. Yeah, I think it's always a good choice. Okay, so number 4, instead of blocking, try talking. That was
typing.
Typing. So this is the opposite situation. So someone did something wrong to you, and instead of communicating that to them, you just block them all right.
Yeah, you dismiss them like as an asshole. You minimize them like whatever.
Yeah. And it may feel like you want to do that. It's sort of like a bit of retribution, right? But it's also, I think it, if someone did something seriously wrong, obviously it's an appropriate action. But if they did something wrong, it's possible that maybe they didn't realize it, or that something they said or did hurt you, or maybe, just maybe, you are taking on meaning that isn't there, because we do that. Like we talked about, we are meaning makers, and we do choose the one that doesn't serve us. It's true, right?
So there's a whole possibility of interpretations or misinterpretations until we actually know. But by communicating it with the other person, we can inform them, and then maybe it is easy enough to rectify. Or we also use it as a teaching point. I don't know how they're going to like that, but that they won't do it further. And I've had it done to me. I've done something that I was unaware that the other person wasn't favoring. And they told me about it. At first, it was a little bit of an ego blow. But then after I got over the initial shock, I was able to appreciate where they were coming from. It was a minor adjustment on my part, and we love each other and have the most fantastic relationship. And they trusted that I would be able to receive that information. And I love them for being able to speak so honestly about it. And it didn't create the split in our relationship. In fact, it made it stronger.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that can happen with family and friends too. I think we've had the situation as well. And what we're sitting in right now is a bit of blocking because of a situation that arose. So it's sort of being left undealt with. And it feels hard on the other person, right?
It sure does, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, without that resolve, without that closure, we revisit it in our mind, wanting to find some resolution to it, right? So it stays animated, it stays alive. Whereas the other way, we could either move past it or get that closure.
Yeah, exactly. So not cutting someone off again and having an open conversation. It's all about communication.
Sure is.
Yeah.
It always is. And it's sometimes difficult to come to it, but in the end, it proves to be beneficial. It is better for us and for them.
Okay. And then number 5 on how to avoid ghosting is probably one of the most important things. If you want to avoid ghosting somebody, be honest with yourself. So recognizing like your own patterns and what you're doing, and are you exhibiting behavior? I put on your big person pants,
What does that mean for you?
Well, just being an adult and not stringing people along for your own good, and recognizing that you might be engaging in behavior that's not helpful or can be hurtful to other people. So recognize when you're breadcrumbing or you're doing other things. So I'm not sure about you, but there's probably some conversations that might need to happen, with some people that maybe we are breadcrumbing with.
Yeah, so I would say to that then, as far as being honest with yourself, ask yourself, what is motivating me to have this position? So if I'm ghosting, is it because I'm trying to avoid feelings of discomfort in how I imagine the other person's going to take it? I don't want to be the bad guy, I'm a people pleaser, whatever it is. Or if I'm breadcrumbing, am I simply, I said breadcrumbing, am I breadcrumbing in order to just satisfy my own position, right? That I'm insecure and need to have all these other people, or I'm saving them for a later day, or just to have them in the bank, whatever it is. Ask yourself, what is your motive in being the way you are?
Yeah. Well,
so
sometimes
be honest about it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we hold on to those things to make ourselves feel good that there's another option there for us.
For sure.
So that because we're living maybe in that not in abundance, but
scarcity.
So are you holding on to people out of scarcity that maybe you're not interested in because you're like, oh, just in case I may want to connect with these people again. Something to consider. Yeah. So next week we're going to continue. So what did you think of that? Did we miss some things about how to avoid ghosting? I can see from the comments it's a really good.
There's always more to be said.
There's so much more to be said. But happy to hear all your comments and suggestions on how to avoid ghosting, and then also what to do when you are ghosted. How to avoid being ghosted, which is what we're going to talk about next week.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. So before we go, so we're trying to keep this short and sweet today.
Like us.
Like us.
I'm short. You're sweet.
I think we're both short. I'm short and sweet. We're both short and sweet. For those who missed it, there's still time to sign up for Open Relationships Startup. So this is our special offer that we had for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. We're continuing it on. So it allows you, it's a special program, short and sweet, like us, to get you to learn the basics of navigating non-monogamy, overcoming jealousy, developing communication skills, and getting your framework set up for your relationship. And what's great about it, we'll put the link in the comments, is if you do it now before Christmas, then you have time to jump in because we're running our bigger program in January. So if you decide to continue on, and you'll be able to jump right in with the others that are doing the program in January.
Yeah, cool.
So awesome. So let us know. And as you know, we're always here to chat if you need anything. And we hope you have a great week with no ghosting. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.